Meanwhile, making light of a very serious situation, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki downplaying supply chain issues yesterday at her daily briefing. Watch.
It was crystal clear that things were not improving on supply chain. People couldn't get dishwashers and furniture and treadmills delivered on time, not to mention all sorts of other things. So why is
the tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed?
Right.
Oh, boy. Joining us now, New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz and Independent Women's Forum Senior Policy Director Hadley Heath Manning. Two working mothers, by the way, who are not laughing about inflation or supply chain issues at home. Hadley, trying to laugh off these issues is doing nothing for Democrats in the polls. Does Jen Psaki realize that?
It doesn't appear so. I would say, there are families like mine who I consider to be fortunate. We're waiting on a part for our refrigerator, but that is a pretty minor problem for our family. We have the income level to kind of deal with the price inflation that we're seeing as a result of these supply chain issues, but it's really low and middle income families who are suffering the most when the price of gasoline, home heat, clothing, groceries are skyrocketing. That's a tax on the poor. And so it's really those families who are feeling the pinch here, and they're not laughing about this at all.
No. Well, in a lot of families, you mentioned one part in a refrigerator. One part can stop a refrigerator from working. And if you've got a big family,
Right.
You don't have a lot of money, you can't snap your fingers and get a new refrigerator, you're stuck. It's a very tough situation. Carol, on so many issues, this administration is sort of denying that there are problems that are really affecting Americans. We have a montage of a few thoughts here, a few sound bites. Let me play that and get your reaction. Roll tape.
COVID, education, job creation. All right, we're over. That's it. Hey, I gave you extra time. Come on, man. You should have asked better questions early on.
That's another issue that we're going to get to in a second. But we had Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, suggesting that the economy was fine. The only problems was when the Trump administration ran it, which runs kind of contrary to a lot of very interesting statistics. Mayorkas, the head of DHS, he was talking about the borders being closed time and again. He still says that when everybody knows it's wide open. We had Joe Biden himself talking about the extraordinary success of the Afghanistan withdrawal. I mean, what's going on? They are denying reality, but I don't think most Americans are buying it. Do you?
Right. I would say, the reason that they get to deny reality is because a large section of the media is on their side. But I find that their dismissive attitude about the shortages Americans are facing really kind of gross. Recently, Jen Psaki was asked about Christmas, and she said, we're not the USPS, and she has no idea about, whether or not Christmas presents will arrive on time. Now, I'm Jewish, but I've heard that Christmas is sort of a big deal. I can't understand why. I can't understand why the White House is just sort of shrugging this off like Americans are not going to care. They're going to care when their presents don't arrive on time. They won't be like, well, Jen Psaki is not the USPS, so I guess it doesn't matter to me. It matters a lot.
Yeah, and then, Hadley, we have another issue near and dear to every mother's and father's heart who have kids in public schools, and that's the issue of the indoctrination that has been revealed to us because of the pandemic, where we kind of ripped back the curtain and saw through remote action what was happening to our kids. And a lot of politicians don't think that's any concern of parents, or even should be any concern of parents, despite the fact that it's the parents' kids that are at school and the parents who are paying for that school. We just showed a clip. We don't have to run it again, but most people have seen a clip of Terry McAuliffe just recently complaining that a reporter was asking about this. And even though he just a couple of weeks ago said in a debate that parents should have nothing to do with the decisions about what books go into schools, I think parents are going to bite back in the terms of elections coming up. The first one being Terry McAuliffe's election, don't you?
I agree. I think parental control of, what our children see, what they learn, has become such an important issue. And it's never been a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan concern. Both sides of the aisle, parents are looking at what their children are learning in terms of sex education, gender identity, the racial conversations that we're having in schools. And they're thinking, these are really issues that are so close to home, so close to my child's heart. I should be the person who has the final say in what my child is learning. This is is a much bigger question than the quality of education, reading, writing, arithmetic. Of course, we care about that too, but I would say this is a much bigger issue now, and it's involving people from both sides of the aisle. We're seeing a very powerful pushback.
And Carol, we're paying for it. I mean, we are taxed for those services that we get in the schools. And taxation without representation is something worth fighting against. In fact, a revolution was made in this country based on that principle. And the bottom line is that right now we have an AG, an Attorney General Garland, who's saying that to fight that at these school board meetings is domestic terrorism.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fight is really to give parents more choice in what they have, what goes on in their schools. And they absolutely should have it. Corey DeAngelis, a really popular schools advocate, says fund students, not systems. And that's really what it's all about. We should be funding the individual students. And you have situations like Terry McAuliffe, who's very openly against the idea of school vouchers or giving parents any choice whatsoever. But of course, his own kids went to private school.
Absolutely.
So it's really always very telling that the people who are against school choice are against school choice for you, not for them.
And of course, you have the mayor of New York, Hadley, whose kids went to these advanced placement courses, and he wants to wipe it out. Now that his kids are in an Ivy League college, he wants to wipe it out. Once they get $1 million, the socialists always are against anybody else making $1 million or even $100,000. Are Democrats fighting, though, this woke culture battle? Is that a losing battle? I think they are losing it right now in public opinion. They, though, don't seem to get it. I mean, Michael Goodwin, a colleague of Carol's, just wrote a piece saying that there are virtually no more moderates left in the Democrat Party.
Right. Well, what we're seeing from wokeism is a real illiberal approach to our society where there can be no dissent, that any form of dissent is simply labeled and written off as sexism or racism or bigotry. That's not what America was founded on. We are supposed to be a liberal democracy where in our society, everyone's welcome to participate in these conversations about what our laws should say, what our culture should be like. And if we don't have that, then we've really lost the script. We've really lost the founding principle that this country was built on, that we're going to be a pluralistic society and people can sort of live and let live. But that's not the end of wokeism. Wokeism says, I'm not going to let you live and let live. I'm going to force you to abide by my new secular religion. And that's what I think wokeism is.
Carol, I heard you nodding in agreement to that. Do you think that we have lost this battle, or that America still believes in the classical liberal definition of what a democracy is?
No. I think Americans are fighting back all across the country. I think you see it in the school board meetings. I think you see it in school board elections. I think you see it in many places across the country. But wokeism, absolutely. I was nodding in agreement because wokeism, the key factor of wokeism is conformity. You must conform. You must fall in line. You must be like everyone else. That's why the moderates in the Democratic Party are having such a hard time, because they're not allowed to say something different. They're not allowed to vote differently. They're not allowed to speak out and say what they actually believe and what their constituents believe. Democrats were saying they're a big tent party and that they want to elect Democrats in all kinds of red areas. Well, here it is. This is what it looks like. And suddenly they're not happy about it.
You know what it kills that bothers me? It kills spontaneity. Wokeism kills spontaneity. Everything has to be scripted, right? And if you're off script, you're condemned and sent to the basement for a couple of hours, if not years. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about America and our economic system is the spontaneity, the innovations. You can't have innovation if you don't have free thinking, and wokeism is killing that, but hopefully not for much longer. Hadley, Carol, great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.